This is Behind the Verdict. I'm John Horford with Marion Cook and Christina Capron. Horford, I guess. I don't, what do you prefer?
Oh my God. Every episode?
I don't know, dude. I can't get it right. It's weird saying your wife's name. Okay. We wanted to, or I wanted to, I guess, discuss this Operation Ajax that is related to Iran becoming sort of the entity that it is in the world today. And it's one of those things that you hear about and it really sounds like a movie, almost like, oh, that didn't happen. Does that happen in real life? I was watching this YouTube video about it, and it was taking little quotes from like Eisenhower's diary, because Eisenhower was the president when this operation took place, and he was like, this is like a dime store like novel. Like, he's like, it doesn't even feel real, or like we were a part of this. And obviously he allowed the United States to participate in this coup that got rid of parliamentary democracy that was under Prime Minister Mohammed Mossadegh in Iran in the 50s. And the reason why it happened, can either of you guess? Just like the most like obvious thing that happens related to Western civilization and this part of the world.
Because they wanted to instill a leader they could control.
I mean, that
Oil,
too.
resources.
Yeah, oil. It's both. They wanted both, but they want that so they could control that. Right. And it's just so interesting that these things legitimately happen in the world, and this did happen, and it helped to create the Iran that we know today. It didn't happen right away. The Islamic Revolution didn't happen until 1979, and this was 1953. But it's pretty fascinating that the CIA and MI6, who's the British version of the CIA, went into Iran and helped to basically overthrow democracy. And we're the type of people who are like, well, we want democracy in more places throughout the world. And it's like, no, we want people that we can control in different places throughout the world. So,
well, let's be honest. I mean, you know, the CIA back in the day did do some pretty shady shit all the time, right? And this would pretty much qualifies that. But you said it was the U.S. and Britain that did this.
Yeah, because primarily the first agreements between Iran and Britain were, I think, like early 1900s, maybe late 1800s, to give them like oil rights. Maybe it was early 1900s. And they had those types of agreements for decades. And then Iran started to take back control of their oil rights, because before they were just getting like a small percentage. So once they started to take that back, Britain was obviously losing a ton of money. So it started to cause issues with them. Another one of the issues that was coming up was that the British knew how to run these types of operations. So they had the right people and they had the right like network to ship it, to produce it, to do all of the things that are part of the process. And Iran didn't. So production went down significantly. So that was causing problems within the country, because although they were getting a bigger slice of the pie, there was less pie because they weren't able to produce at the same rate that the British were, because they knew how it was run. So there were people from multiple different areas that wanted the government to change because they were interested in having a more effective business model. And I feel like greed always, plays a part in these types of situations as well.
Well, I have two questions to start off. You ready for them?
I guess. I don't know.
You guess?
I don't know.
Okay, the first one is, so it makes sense why Britain was involved in this. They were losing money on the oil rights. Why did the U.S. get involved?
I think the U.S. got involved because they wanted a leader that they can control, and I'm sure that there was some sort of like monetary kickback. The excuse that they used at the time, which was the same excuse that everyone used from the 40s until the early 90s when the Cold War ended, and it was just communism. And that's the real reason, actually, I think that the U.S. got involved. I think that the USSR at the time, they were worried that if they didn't get involved and put in a leader that they could control, that the USSR would be trying to do the same thing, and then they would have influence in this country versus the United States having the influence that they would like to have.
And because this is such an academic topic, I have a non-academic question to follow up with. This is a question I think we can all kind of figure out, but they called it Operation Ajax, right? AJAX.
Yeah.
Why do you think that was?
I didn't look it up.
Back in the 50s, Ajax was a cleaner.
It's still a cleaner.
Right, but it was a huge household cleaner at the time. So what did they do?
They cleaned house.
They cleaned house.
Is that why? You really think that's why they called it that?
What else? Why other reason are they going to do that?
I don't know.
It makes a lot of sense.
There must be some underlying meaning. I have no idea.
I'm going with that one.
Okay. Yeah.
What do you think, Christina?
Sounds like it could be possible.
All right, we have 2 votes for that. John, are you in?
Yeah, I'm in. It makes as much sense as anything else.
So going back, Operation Ajax basically took the parliament out, took the democracy they had in place out, and placed it with what?
I think that it just gave the Shah, which just means king, more power. But I think that they did put someone from the military into a position of power as well.
But doesn't it make you wonder who picked those people to be placed in a position of power?
I mean, the Shah, I feel like that comes from it's like a family line, correct? So
generally, but
yeah.
They still had to pick somebody else. I guess it would be similar to like a prime minister in Britain, right? Someone from the military who could oversee the day-to-day.
Yeah, I mean, and who do you pick? You pick somebody that you can control. You pick somebody that is willing to give you control of the oil and isn't going to ask many questions and is just going to,
someone who's corrupt that their country's going to start hating, right?
I mean, probably, maybe, eventually. And essentially that ended up being that's what happened in time. So these events eventually led to the 1979 Islamic Revolution, and that's when Iran got very, very strict and religious, and women were only allowed to show their face and their hands, and everything else had to be covered, and they were limited in terms of going in public. Men and women were separated in lots of cases. They were limited to the careers that they could have. They were limited to educational opportunities. They were limited with what they could do in public, like no singing in public, no dancing in front of men that aren't in your family, no sex until marriage, a ton of rules. And before that, Iran wasn't necessarily like that. It was actually becoming 1953, and then I guess even a little bit after that, it had more of a European vibe. Like if you see pictures of people, the way that they dressed, they could just be in Europe for all you know. You have no idea. And I just feel like there were more opportunities. One of the interesting things though that I saw was related to literacy rates at the time. So it was saying that before the Islamic Revolution, over time, under this more strict authoritarian type system, there ended up being more access to resources in rural areas, because that's one of the things that caused a lot of this upheaval, was just that they felt like they're focusing too much on the cities and building them up and then leaving people out in the rural areas, basically, high and dry. So an increased access to opportunity in rural areas, but in addition to that, over time, they started allowing women to be educated again, and literacy rates and education rates rose to an all-time high, even higher than.
This is after the revolution?
Yeah, in time. I think it was maybe 20 years after. So it took a while to get to that point, but I just thought it was interesting that eventually it kind of got to the point where there was a benefit, even though there was a stark contrast between the freedom that men and women have.
So what you're saying is when this was going on, women weren't allowed to ask questions, but over time they were, right?
I mean, a little, or
Say yes.
access to education. I don't know.
So when you
Say yes. Oh man, she always does this.
So when you say yes, now I can come back and ask a question because I want to take us all the way back to how they picked these people to put into power.
Yeah.
And I understand the Shah would be like the king and that's a family lineage kind of thing. But do you think they held like interviews to say, hey, can we control you? How is this going to work? Or do you think it's just somebody they knew from somebody who knew somebody else and they picked this person that way? Because I'm kind of curious about that. Like, how do you choose
Probably both.
someone to put into a position of power? How do you know they're going to be subservient to what you want to see happen?
You don't. You never know. But
But it sounds like it worked
I mean,
to some degree anyway, because everything changed, right?
Yeah. It's interesting that the United States played a part in a democracy in this part of the world collapsing. And it's a part of the world that doesn't really have a ton of democracies. I mean, outside of Israel in the Middle East, is there another democracy? Like legitimate
I'm not
democracy?
sure, but a lot of people villainize a lot of countries in the Middle East because of the strict rules and stuff. And then it's like, we literally put them in this position.
Yeah, I mean, we put the people that put them in this position in positions of power and
Correct. So
funded them
indirectly.
and trained them. And yeah, I mean, it even says like the secret police that the Shah had, the Savak, they were trained by CIA and Mossad. Mossad
You
is
almost
like,
said CSI Miami, didn't you?
No, CIA and
Yes, you
Mossad.
did.
No, listen, I love CSI. Well, kind of. I don't know. I haven't seen it since I was like 11. But yeah, they were trained by the CIA and Mossad. And it's interesting because a lot of the terrorist organizations that we know and fight against today are funded through Iran. And initially, the people that probably trained those terrorists and gave them the skills and the knowledge to be effective when it comes to fighting Israel and the United States were Israel and the United States. Like, they trained them themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They trained them, they funded them, they got them weapons.
But going back to the beginning of this, who was Britain and the U.S. at the time to decide we know better how to run your country?
Exactly.
I mean, that's really a question I think inquiring minds would want to know is how did they decide we know better and we're going to overthrow this? Because they were superpowers back then?
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, post World War II, kind of ran the show, decided how things were going to go one way or another. It was either them or Russia, us or Russia. I mean, I guess you could put us in like one little group and USSR and their allies as another little group. And we were trying to gain as much ground and power and money and influence as we could, which includes going into countries, overthrowing leaders, and seeing if we can, place people who will be subservient to our wishes, throughout the world. But it's just interesting the ripple effect and the ramifications that it can have down the line.
So at the end of the day, do you think Operation Ajax served its purpose? Or do you think it hurt the people of Iran more than it helped them?
For sure. I think.
I don't know. You'd have to ask them. Who knows? Maybe the majority of people are, happy living in this system.
With less rights.
I don't know.
I don't know that the women would have been. I mean, they had rights and then they were stripped of the rights.
I don't know that they would have been either.
That probably wouldn't work well for sassy people like us.
No. Yeah,
Right?
you'd be dead.
We'd be stoned.
You'd both be stoned.
For sure.
Yeah.
You'd both be dead. Yeah. I read an article about a woman who was killed a few years ago because like too much of her head was showing. I'm sure that kind of thing happens all the time.
Don't think they like this. I'm laughing, but like because it's a joke. Like, let's be real.
I know, but I just don't want to speak for anybody else.
I know,
It's one of
but-
those things.
It's human rights.
The other interesting thing about it, and it's related to it, I was watching a clip from like an Anthony Bourdain show. You guys know Anthony Bourdain,
Yes.
right? The chef. And he was talking about how he had heard all these negative things and horrible things about Iran. But he said when he went there, he's like, everything was beautiful. The people were beautiful and the land was beautiful. And they were the nicest people ever. And they were so welcoming. And they would welcome you into their home and offer you a meal. And
I've seen a lot of TikToks like that recently from people just traveling for like
Oh,
a
really?
month. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like just clips of
just-
people giving them food and giving them rides and
just
inviting
saying
them
it's
in.
like an incredible place, like very welcoming,
but
very
nice
loving.
people and beautiful places and incredibly welcoming don't fit the narrative that people want to spin,
Right.
making them look like the enemy, so that when they want to do something or they have to retaliate or something else happens,
They have public
then it
support.
fits the narrative a little bit better, don't you think?
It fits the narrative way better, but I don't know. What do you do about it? How does this continue to happen? Like, for example, I don't think, and we always wanted to tie this episode into what's happened recently. Obviously, the U.S. intervening in the conflict between Israel and Iran. And how does a president, and this happens a lot. It's not like Trump's the only president who's ever not gotten congressional approval and has done something like this-ish. Why are there no ramifications for people in positions of power like that? Is it just because the crown is so heavy and these are extremely difficult, decisions that need to be made, and there are protections, within the Constitution and other places, or what?
Well, I do think that's part of it. I think there are protections in the Constitution that won't allow, for example, any president, to declare outright war. That has to be an act of Congress. But are there things they can do short of that? Yes. Are there things that they are allowed constitutionally to do short of that? Yes. But it's not generally that just the president makes a call. He's got a whole table full of advisors and the Joint Chiefs of Staff and everybody else who have analyzed it. The heads of the military have analyzed it. What do we do? How do we do this? And I would like to think that they look at, the loss of human life and trying to save that to some degree. And it sounds like that's kind of what they focused on. But I think one of the scariest things is quite honestly nuclear power, right? If Iran can bomb Israel with something, what's next? Who's next? And I think they look to that a lot. But the funny thing is, who was one of the first countries to use nuclear weapons?
Well, the only country to use it against an enemy is the United States.
Right. So again, this kind of goes back to what I said a few minutes ago. Who does the U.S. think they are to impose what they think on other people? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. I don't know, but I'd like opinions on that.
I think that's why we focus so heavily on military power and funding, because we're always going to win. You know what I mean? We have so much more than every other country almost combined.
Well, I think there's a lot more military presence than there used to be, and a lot of other countries do have the nuclear technology that they didn't have years ago. I mean, for a long time, it seemed like it was the U.S. and Russia who had that technology, but over the years, clearly, it's either been sold or found or designed or whatever by other countries who maybe historically have been less stable with what are they going to do with those kinds of weapons that don't have the Constitution behind it to say you can't start a nuclear war without an act of Congress. What if they don't have a Congress? And it is the Shah who decides.
But Iran doesn't have these weapons.
Don't they have some nuclear capabilities?
They don't have nuclear weapons. And the programs stopped in 2003.
And that's what they said.
I mean, that's what we know. I mean, they're a part of this non-proliferation treaty that a bunch of countries have signed. 191 have joined the treaty, including the 5 nuclear weapon states. But there are several that aren't a part of it. I think it's Russia, India, Pakistan, and North Korea are not a part of it. But the other countries in the world that do have nuclear weapons are all a part of it.
But are any of the 5 that are not part of that pact allies of Iran? So while Iran might not have their own nuclear capability, do they have an ally that does?
I mean, I would say Russia is somewhat of an ally. Maybe North Korea behind the scenes. I have no idea.
North Korea is kind of scary sometimes, don't you think?
Yeah,
For sure.
But here's the thing: if it was really about nuclear power, why haven't we invaded North Korea and done something there?
True.
We've never done anything there.
Are they fighting with other people right now? North Korea?
I mean, they make crazy threats all the time.
Well, I'm not talking about crazy threats. Are they actually doing it?
Fighting with people?
I mean, that's what Iran and Israel are doing, right? They're fighting with each other.
Yeah, but we've made these threats towards Iran for decades.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, Iran has done a lot of things over the years that precipitated someone having to look in to see what they're doing.
And I feel like they are being, under this treaty, I feel like they are being like managed.
I think treaties are great as long as everybody really puts in the time and information and they abide by it.
Yeah.
But who are the watchdogs for those treaties?
Some group assigned, I'm assuming, based on the members of this treaty. And they're also supposed to be, every country that's a part of it is actually supposed to be moving towards complete disarmament, including the United States. But obviously, I think we've all gotten rid of a ton of nuclear weapons, especially the U.S., and I think Russia's even gotten rid of some, even though I don't believe they're part of this treaty. I could be completely wrong. It doesn't list.
And I think my next question would be, as part of this treaty, the watchdog groups, do they have unfettered access to go in, like no search warrants required? I can just walk into anywhere, or do they have to have some sort of heads up search warrant, something else to go into these places?
I think it just depends on how much power you have. I think for the majority, or for everybody, it's probably like they can go in anytime and search, but like the United States runs the show. Are you going to go in, and if the U.S. is doing things behind the scenes that aren't according to the rules, like, what are you going to do? Can't do anything.
That's my point, though. I mean, it could be anybody who's not following the rules. That could be the hard part.
For sure. It definitely could be. Not necessarily related to this topic directly, but the United States being the war power that it is always makes me think of the election yesterday. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I can't remember the guy's name.
Mamdani.
There you go. Thank you. Democratic Socialist won the Democratic primary. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think a lot of people can relate to some of the policies that would make people's lives better that democratic socialism tends to promote, like universal health care, things of that nature. One of the things that I think about sometimes, and not that I disagree with that at all, I mean, I think that healthcare should be a fundamental right, especially in the United States, the richest country that's ever existed. One of the things that I think about is it comes at the cost of something, and obviously the area where we could make the most obvious cuts would seemingly be within our military, just because of the amount of money we spend compared to the rest of the world. But at what cost does that happen? Because I feel like the United States, and I really do. I've been to a ton of countries. I've been all over the world. I really do love the U.S. I don't think I'd want to live in any other country besides the U.S. But there's so much resentment, I feel like, built up against the U.S. So if the U.S. wasn't the military power that it is, what could happen? What would happen? Like, let's say that the United States became a more peaceful type place and allocated these resources away from the military and into social services in a bunch of areas. You know, there's no reason why people have to go hungry in the U.S. There's no reason why there's homelessness in the U.S. There's no reason why when people are sick, they can't go and get the medical services they need in the U.S. But if we put the necessary funds that we have to into those types of services at the cost of our military strength, does that make us a target?
Yes, it does.
It could, but
I
also,
think it does, yeah.
I think it does.
I think it does too.
Okay, hear me out.
Yeah.
But also, if we stop sending billions of dollars for weapons to Israel to kill innocent Palestinians, I know we're getting controversial here, but Iran probably wouldn't hate us quite as much. Like, we've been doing horrible shit to them, overthrowing their democracy. Like, can we just stop doing that shit and maybe like actually work towards peace? How do you bomb someone and then expect them to like you and want to like work on diplomacy, or you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't fucking get it.
I think going back to the original part of that is the idea that, you know, I think there are cuts that can be made across different areas, and I think we do need to fix the social and societal issues we have. Homelessness, hunger, all of those types of things, universal health care, that needs to be a number one priority. I don't think necessarily that deep gashing cuts to the military is the way to do it. Can they cut some things? Absolutely. But the minute you show a weakness that you are not as strong, you're going to become the target. And I mean by you, I mean the U.S., right? And then so you have then the decision, is that what you're going to do? You might be overthrown. You might be overthrown by somebody who is far worse than what we have. And I think that's where a lot of people come into play and go, no, we need the military to be strong. That being said, Christina's point is valid that we shouldn't be sending money to other countries for weapons or other types of things. We shouldn't be always getting involved in every worldwide crisis unless it's going to affect the world, right?
Yeah, I agree. Like literally Donald Trump's tweet after he bombed the nuclear sites was like, now peace. It's like, bro, what do you mean?
That's something completely different.
I mean, kind of, yeah.
No, it's, yeah. We can get into that in the January 6th episode.
Okay.
No, or we could talk about it now. Actually,
No, I'm just saying. It was to my point that like, how do you expect people to like want to try for peace when you just keep coming at them and bombing them?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Honestly.
But I think the resentment would remain even if the United States stopped doing those things. So if we weaken our military power, and I think we immediately become a target. I don't think people forget.
Sure, but don't you think we can weaken it a bit and still be the military power of the world? Like we are so far.
Maybe
above.
there's that's just like the most obvious area where we spend just way more than the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And there may be other areas in the budget. I'm not a budget expert. We should get somebody that is a budget expert to come in and have this conversation. Like, where is the money to pay for all of these services that we genuinely probably should have in the United States?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it comes down to, and the point you made is not invalid at all. There is a huge amount of resentment from these countries. And of course, in this case, Iran is an ally of Palestine. Palestine has literally been decimated, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands. I don't even know what the death toll is at this point. I mean,
And we're funding it.
Yeah, it's hard to fathom.
Yes.
It's hard to fathom. I'd love to get somebody on to talk about, there's some people that come to mind, to just talk about the Israeli point of view on this as well, just because I don't necessarily think that the majority of people are necessarily anti-Palestine.
No, I think a lot of them don't agree with what their government's doing as well.
Yeah, and it's just it's getting painted as, everybody is pro-genocide. Because it is genocide.
This goes back, though, to what we've talked about in so many different episodes, is in the media, you're going to hear the spin the media wants to put on it, whether you're pro this, pro that, not pro this, not pro that. It depends on what is the social temperature for people, what is the media trying to grasp to get that headline, right? Mm-hmm. So it may be what's really happening there, and it may not be. We've seen that in local cases. We've seen it in national cases in the United States. It's no different when it's a worldwide stage. You just have more people watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with social media. I mean, people can twist things or take a video from years ago and claim, the news can do that too, but.
Yeah, but there's a benefit to it also because of social media, you get to see what is actually happening.
Could you imagine if we had social media during like the Holocaust and stuff?
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
powerful for
it's
sure.
Similar. It's on a similar level. I know there are a lot of Jewish people who take offense to the rhetoric that the Palestinian genocide is similar to the Holocaust in a lot of ways, but it really is. It really is. It's hundreds of thousands of people being starved, homes destroyed, lives destroyed, being killed. It will not be looked upon favorably historically. No. But also the other thing, and it doesn't justify anything that's happened. Humanity it's a history of, taking what people want. It's a history of murdering and conquering, and it's not right, and it feels even worse in a time where you would think that we would know better or be above it. But I mean, very clearly that's not the case. And humans are still as tribalistic and sometimes
searching for power, searching
animalistic
for different kinds of things, just like they used to, but they do it under a different thought process. They do it under a different color of law, so to speak, and they try to bring about what they want to see happen. Maybe it's a different race they want to promote, like Hitler. Maybe it's something different. Maybe my religion's better than your religion, or whatever it may be. But there's always somebody who thinks they know better, they know more, and everybody should do it like that, right? Because really, that's what this boils down to a lot of. You don't do it my way. You should do it my way. My way's better.
So I think we just need more humility in our world leaders. I mean, you have to have some level of strength, but there needs to be humility. There needs to be diplomacy. There needs to be empathy.
Well, I think you need to add compassion to that to understand what others may be going through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Because without that, you're just going to be stuck, and you're going to be on this circular motion of just trying to get all the power you can, and it's like a power grab. But do you think, going back to the history, the beginning of the United States, that was something where they were the rebel? They broke off from Britain, they broke away, and they built this power basically to say, you know, we're not going to be controlled. You shouldn't be controlled either. Yet it seems like they kind of control.
As soon as they got the power to, yeah.
Yeah, because I think you realize that you have to, or someone else will try to take you down.
I think you need to do that to some degree. I just don't know that the U.S. should probably get involved in everything that it gets involved in.
Yeah.
Like, I'd really like to know what are the parameters they use to decide, should we get involved in this conflict, but not that conflict, and why?
I mean, it seems to be financial gain and influence among people that we want to keep our allies in this case. Like, I don't necessarily know that there's like a clear financial gain for us, but if we want Israel to like us and to continue to be our allies, it makes sense for us to continue to fund them financially and to back them in efforts like this. I mean, and then, you know, Trump makes crazy comments like, oh man, and that land, that's going to be some of the best land in the world. We can put up the best resorts in the world right there. It's
Gaza,
like,
you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, oh,
Evil.
yikes. It's like just the fact that a president would say that is crazy to me.
I'm with you.
Okay. Anything else? I know this is very different than the episodes that we usually do, and I was trying to add more of I wanted to add in like an element of, is there a way to sort of like legally hold a president accountable for the actions that they take in another country, and then highlight also the United States' involvement in getting rid of democracy in this part of the world. So it's like, why can't they be a democracy like us? And it's like, well, they were kind of trying to, and then we overthrew them because they were trying to take back their oil rights, and we were like, that's not going to happen.
I think the tough part with holding a president accountable is that a lot of these files are classified for how long that president's either.
I'm talking about a president right now. I'm not even
I know,
talking,
but
I'm talking about Eisenhower.
I know.
I'm talking about President Trump.
But it's cyclical. I feel like we keep all these things classified, all the war crimes or like bad things, and then they're released years in advance when you're like, okay, well, he's
or years
dead
later.
Sorry. They're like dead or not in power.
Well, I think they do that under the idea that it's national security and they're trying to keep things safe. But I think they have perhaps maybe utilized that idea or theory just a little too much, you know, tried to keep too much quiet or too much secretive. But if you think back to the CIA of the 50s, that's what they did, right? They had files on everybody. They had files on each other, right? We know that from history.
Yeah, CIA, FBI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there were even files on the CIA directors when it was like, wasn't it Herbert Hoover? There were files on him, and he was the director of the agency.
There should be. What a guy. He had files on everybody, and he lived quite a life. He had files on JFK and Malcolm
Everybody.
X and
Is that
MLK
accountability in a way, though?
What?
Files on everybody?
No, it's blackmail.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he used it as blackmail.
Yeah, it seems a lot more like blackmail.
Yeah,
like
he
I
I
got
wasn't
some,
alive then. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, he used it as
I've
blackmail.
got something on you, and you're going to decide what I want you to decide, and you're
Okay,
going to
okay.
rule the way I want you to rule. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I'm going to drop this bomb in your
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
Yep, exactly. So
So no answer.
there wasn't supposed to be an answer. It's just supposed to be a conversation and just an opportunity to think about some of this stuff and the way that these events are not, they don't happen in a vacuum and things are connected throughout history. And
I feel like a lot of people might not have even known that Iran was a democracy at one point in time. You know what I mean? And that
Yeah.
we are responsible for that crumbling.
which is one of the main things that I
Yeah.
kind of wanted
That's
to highlight. I know
good to know.
we're not
Awareness.
historians. Probably didn't do the best job of
You did
explaining. We didn't do the best job of explaining that story. We'll do a better job in the future. But if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to come on and you're a historian and you could describe the events that happened in Iran in 1953 much better than we could, we would love to have you on. So reach out to us, BTV_pod.
And if you'd like to come and talk to us about other cases, or spar with John because he's the sassy one of the group, let
So
us know
sassy.
that too.
Yeah, that's so sassy. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.